you moved. So are you concerned that like I could identify or someone could identify as like a 12-year-old girl and then have sex with someone and then it would be breaking the law because
no, there's like I've seen these articles before. They like pick some like person who is like 30 years old but identifies as 12 so they can have sex with minors. I think that's disturbing.
Okay, so it's not that.
Yeah, I mean, oh, boy, this is a straw man that just will not die, will not burn. Kill it with fire. The straw man. Identifying as a different age than you are isn't super comprehensible. Right? Age is a number. Gender is a social and internal recognition of some kind of role, some kind of relational thing in society. Identifying yourself and being identified by others as a gender that is different than what you might expect based on your sex, that's comprehensible. Whether or not you agree that should be a thing or whatever, it's a concept that you can understand, right? Sex and gender are different. There's actually nobody who disagrees about this. Somebody who thinks that, oh, sex and gender, that's the word for the same thing. No, right? What's the definition that somebody like Matt Walsh or somebody super anti-trans would like to use? They would say a woman is an adult human female. Okay. So they're not exactly the same. There's some difference between sex and gender. People like that usually have a lot of other differences that they think about in terms of men and women who should be the head of the household, maybe how you should dress, things like that. Right. So a man can be topless jogging outdoors, and people would lose their minds if a woman is doing this. Right. So it's like, wait a minute, those are just different sexes. How did we get to like different behaviors? What are we doing here? Oh, there's societal expectations. Oh, that's interesting. So there's other things that make sex and gender not the same thing. So identifying as a gender that maybe isn't what you might, isn't the most common thing based on sex. So most human males are men or boys, if they're younger. Most human females are women or girls, right? But not 100%, and that's obviously the group of people we're talking about. To relate that to, oh, what if I identify as a different age and then I get to have sex with minors? This is such a weird. There's something really fundamentally wrong with people who are looking at the world this way. Something has gone terribly wrong if this is the way that you're just conceiving about this conversation.
Then important to be consistent in your belief systems about what you can and cannot be able to identify out of.
That's not how I would classify it.
Well, how would you classify it?
I think there's a lot more salience to somebody identifying as like not the gender they were born with than the race or age. And I could like get into it, but
do you agree with that?
I would say so. For me, it's more a matter of people should be able to identify how they want to. As far as how you respond to that, that's your own prerogative. In that sense, I think people should police both ends of it. And for me, I believe people should be able to identify how they choose.
Right. So there's a lot of people, relatively few, but in the it's got to be millions of people who their gender or gender identity or something doesn't match what their gender assignment at birth or what their sex is that you would expect typically for somebody with that gender. And I would say probably the majority of those people are recognized by others socially. So they have internal and external, recognition of this reality. There's two people that I know of. It's Ollie London and Rachel Dolezal, who have identified as something like transracial, although it's unclear if that's exactly like really how they conceive of it. Something like that. And they Rachel Dolezal was recognized for some amount of time, but it's because she was lying in the sense of she was saying not I identify as black, or like I'm, you know, I was born to white parents, but you know this is how I see myself. She was saying like I am, you know, this is how I was born. And when people found out about that, they were like, okay, well, we don't recognize that. So if you want to try to make some argument that maybe race should be recognized that way, and race is a social construct, in the sense of, you know, when we look at recognizing somebody as black, that's different than recognizing somebody as white, because if you're a quarter black or a 16th black, you in America, there's a high likelihood you might be identified as black. But if you're, you know, half white, if you're 16th white, being identified as white because of that is less likely. So there's something socially a little bit kind of complicated nuance going on there in terms of age. So something like America to China, the age that you are might be identified. So you're like 1 year old when you're born. Please correct me if I'm incorrectly stating this, but in different places in the world, you might be recognized as like plus or minus 1 year based on when they start counting. So I guess if you were talking about that, maybe there's something to say, but generally across the world, people recognize your age as the number of revolutions of the Earth around the sun. There isn't really a more kind of complicated thing, and I'm not aware of anybody who identifies as trans-aged or anybody who's recognized by others as trans-aged. So these are really just kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, trying to come up with some weird way to try to undermine just a thing that clearly exists.
How I respond to that is different.
So people can identify. I just want to make sure I understood correctly. So people can identify. I can identify as a goat. There's actually a guy who lives as a goat. That's true. People can identify how they want, but
when people say can identify how you want, they're talking about gender, right? They're not talking about just kind of anything, because gender is this kind of specific thing that we recognize this, in this
other
way.
people, the compulsion for them to pretend or act as if they believe it should not be there.
Yeah, like for me, it's a matter of respect. If somebody asks, please call me by this name, I normally voice out of respect.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great thing. It's like, hey, my name is Joseph, but I go by Travis or whatever, right? That's the kind of thing that you can identify as this is my name. This is, that's the kind of thing that's very reasonable to recognize. And you could say to somebody, hey, I got a copy of your legal documents, and legally this is your name and this is what I'm going to call you. And you could do that, and it would be, kind of rude. It might be understandable why you're calling them that thing, other than what they want to be called. But there's usually not like a great reason to do that. So the question is, why does this keep you up at night? Oh gosh, on their legal document, it says this, but they want to be referred to as like a different name. This is unacceptable. This needs to be the main focus of my entire life, of stopping this person from being known as the name that they want to be known as. That would be really weird.
I don't think that people should be forced or mandated to respond a certain way.
Okay. All right. Is that his argument clear?
Yeah, but then in private, we just had like the question like a couple questions ago that was like you should be allowed to like dog on it in private. So it's like I feel like a lot of people probably are saying people's name and then the pronouns that they're asked to use, and then don't agree with it privately. And I think that's an interesting thing to think about as a society.
Do you think we lose something when we pretend? When we pretend something that we clearly don't believe? Like, do you think we lose something of our virtue of ourselves?
No. Because I don't think a person's gender identity has anything to do with another person's like beliefs and like their stake in whether they think that that person's gender identity. Like I don't see how it's a factor that concerns the lives of the people receiving it. Like I don't even think they're necessarily receiving it. There's just a person who's walking about the world and asking to be referred to in a manner. And if that's something that you can do out of courtesy, why not?
Cool. All right. Is there anything I'll give you guys the last word.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not so similar, but something that has some overlap would be something like religious belief. Somebody says, "Oh, hey, I'm a Christian, or I'm Muslim, or I'm Jewish, or something." Actually, Judaism is maybe a good example because I'm Jewish. I'm not an Orthodox Jew. A lot of Orthodox Jews would say, "Oh, this person is not Jewish because they're not like real Jewish." And it's like somebody who is reasonable could have a viewpoint that I'm not a real Jew because they're Orthodox. They don't see me as that, but they can understand what I mean when I say that I'm Jewish. They can recognize that I have, some similarity with how they perceive of Jewish. Depending on how rude they want to be, they can, they're not going to refer to me as a Christian. They're not going to refer to me as a Muslim. Maybe they don't want to refer to me as a Jew. Maybe they will, or maybe they won't, depending on how much they want to signal their opposition to how I identify. They may or may not state that. They may or may not refer to me that way. And what they feel personally, in their life in general, they can do that. So I feel like that's a pretty good analogy for something like being trans. Oh, okay. A reasonable person will say, okay, I understand what you mean when you say that you're a woman and you're trans. I don't see it that way. Depending on how courteous I want to be, I'm gonna, or how strongly it's important to me to try to signal that I'm opposed to this, and I have strong beliefs that this isn't the way that you see the world. That's not how I see it, and it's critical that I notify you and notify people around me that I disagree with this perspective. I may or may not say it that way, but it's comprehensible what I'm talking about, and it's not like you're saying the Earth is flat. You're saying, okay, well, you're part of this category. Maybe I don't see those categories that way. Ultimately, probably not going to be that close friends if I'm really like, boo, I really have this strong disdain for your like whole, just like who you are as a person, how you see yourself. That could be a kind of tricky relationship, but that's kind of deep, complicated human interaction to try to talk about this as like, oh my gosh, where I'm having to lie about how the world really is. It's like we recognize that we have somewhat different perspectives on things. Or even, so I'm not particularly religious. I'm maybe not quite atheist, but, I don't think that there's like a guy up there. Somebody who's Christian and they're saying like, oh, I'm going to church on Sunday to pray to God. I'm not going to be like, there is no God. You're delusional. Screw you. I'm just gonna be like, yeah, have a good time at church. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and the fact that I'm not being a whatever anti-theist, Reddit neckbeard atheist, whatever the stereotype is, doesn't mean that I'm signaling something that I know to be false about the world by being somewhat respectful of somebody having a different view of just how they relate to the world. It doesn't mean that, oh, I've given up on truth. It's like, okay, that's fine. I can tell you once, like, hey, if we're having a beer, it's kind of interesting. Like, I have a kind of different perspective on metaphysics. You think that there's a God. I don't really see it like that. But at every second, do I really have to be like, every time I sneeze and they say, God bless you, I have to be like, there is no God, actually, or I'm giving up on truth. This is just a nonsense farcical argument. I wish there was something good here.
Toward, is there anything I should have said I didn't said, or should have asked you I didn't ask you?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think. I think you could have sort of like looked at how people's beliefs are pushed into other people.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of when people identify as a certain way, oftentimes it's not them who ask to be treated one way or the other, or who say, here's how I would like this to be done.
Yeah.
It's institutions. I think a big issue here is they got rid of a lot of the gendered bathrooms. And now the issue is that, like there are fewer restrooms because they have locks. And it's a small thing where it's not a huge deal, but certain people do feel uncomfortable. And in trying to
You mean locks on the stalls?
just the bathroom in general.
Like single use.
Yeah. So single use.
Oh, that's rough. That's rough. So like a whole bathroom that's multi-stall is now locked and only one person can use it at once. That's not a great solution from efficiency's sake.
Use and making restrooms that were men's and women's rooms that could accommodate multiple people, only accommodate one person.
I mean that's nonsensical. I've never heard of that happening before. That's really weird.
I will also say it is strange to go into a bathroom that was a men's room. I'm leaving the urinal and a female professor is there, and you have a class for the next 2 hours, and you're kind of like avoiding eye contact. It's a little bit of a weird situation.
Creepy.
This sounds like a lived experience of yours, Alec. Sorry not to.
No, you're
that on
good.
him.
You have anything I should have asked or
Yeah,
anything?
you didn't ask about neopronouns. Does neopronouns wait? Do those include they them? I'm not sure. I think neopronouns are.
No, they them are not neopronouns. Those are wicked old
No,
pronouns.
go ahead.
Oh, you know all about this, Steve. I think there's they them and then there's neopronouns. Right?
Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you. Thanks for playing. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Fist bump, everybody. Good. Extra credit if you're the professors in here. Give them a hand. Good job.
That was pretty fun. Yeah. Okay. Let me know if there's any videos you want me to review that maybe are a little bit less shallow. Just leave it in the comments. Yeah, give me a follow, subscribe, whatever. Take care, everybody.